Well, Joe, they say Duke and Carolina always delivers. Always delivers. That is factually true. This delivered for Cooper Flagg. It delivered for John Shire. And I think it delivered North Carolina into soul-searching mode. I think soul-searching mode happened about 10 minutes into this game when it was fairly clear it ain't turning around for the Tar Heels. Where do you want to start?
Well, let's go back to handsome Dave Canales telling us you can't win a game in the first quarter. You can't win a game in the first half. Oh, no. 5 minutes into this game, it was 15-6.
Yeah.
It was the fat lady was warming up. Then it was 23-6 after 7 minutes, and I said, and then the full 15 minutes into the first half, 40-13, the game was over.
Yeah,
40-13. I'm at a little bit of a loss. I expected Duke to play really well in this game.
Sure.
This is as close as we've seen Duke in monster status since the Arizona State shellacking in the charity game. So bully to them. Proctor with 10 points in the first half. You see the difference that Proctor can be. And I said this before the season. What a luxury. You went from needing Tyrese Proctor to be some sort of Will Avery, some sort of Jason Williams knockoff. And now here he is. He scores 10 points and a half, hits a couple threes. That's how you're going to win the national championship. If you can get this version of Tyrese Proctor, that's how you're going to win the national championship.
So I actually, as the game was unfolding in the first 10 minutes, I was going back to the conversation you and I were having about how these games typically end up being, especially in this era of Duke and Carolina, where the freshmen, keep an eye on the freshmen. How are the freshmen going to perform in this game? Cooper Flagg understood the assignment. Con Knippel understood the assignment. To your point, Tyrese Proctor is the luxury here. But to me, I think the underrated conversation about the first half, while everybody was going gaga over Cooper Flagg, and I'm not trying to diminish Cooper Flagg, to me it was Malwatch. Malwatch was able to affect the game. I mean, I think he was put down for 6 rebounds, 4 offensive rebounds in the first half, but to me he was affecting the game along with Malik Brown in a way that probably would not be appreciated defensively, right? Because we're all eyes are on Cooper Flagg. Who, again, I'll just say, he understood the assignment. I don't know what more you could say about Cooper Flagg at this point in the season where he gets it. You know he gets it all the way. I mean, I jotted this down as the game was completely out of hand. He's still getting mad at certain things like turnovers, a call not going their way. He never turned it off. So that, man, like, check the box, dude. You got your moment so far in this rivalry the way that you played. And I think that's the part that if you're a Carolina fan, you saw Duke and John Shire absolutely understand what this was about. Hubert Davis this week, I was talking to Brendan Marks about this from The Athletic, where he's like, Hubert 2 days ago was talking about how he had no doubts, given the season and how everything goes, that they're going to be ready for this game. Dude, they were not ready for this game. And then Ian Jackson, again, getting back to the freshman, Ian Jackson's 0 for 3 from the field, 0 of 2 in the first half. Drake Powell barely got any burn, 0 of 1. It was a 3-point attempt. He got 9 minutes. So I need you, and look, there's roster issues and everything else. So I'm going to need you to tap into your Roy Williams whisperer mode for me, because we've seen this before. And ironically, we were talking about it earlier in the week, I think with Matt Norlander over at CBS Sports. We've seen Roy Williams let a team, for lack of a better term, sit in the shit, right? I like to call it you got yourself in this mess. I'm not going to coach your way out of it. You know what the deal was. We talked about this all week. You get yourself out of this mess. The classic Roy Williams, arms crossed, not a lot of emotion, do whatever. For the first time that I can recall, Hubert Davis did that. Usually Hubert Davis is the instant energy, stomping the floor, clapping, getting excited, live action, all that stuff. He was sitting, because I was sitting across from the UNC bench today, arms crossed, very Roy Williams-esque. in the, all right, man, you got yourself into this shit. You can get yourself out of it. And typically, and again, I don't want to make everything like, well, Roy would have done this. I mean, poor Hubert's dealing with the whole, Roy would have done this in the same way that Roy Williams was dealing with, well, Dean Smith would have done this. Use your timeouts, right? So you're really left with two choices. You either do what he did, where you played the majority of your starters. I think only 8 guys saw action in the first half. You basically go to your starters and you let them sit in it, or you do the line change. The problem with the line change, though, is who you're going to put out there. It could get even more embarrassing if you put the line change out there. Those are things that we've seen in the past when Carolina's having an embarrassing night and the coach is trying to make a point. And tonight, I think Hubert was left with no choice but to make his point by saying, y'all got some soul searching to do. And it got out of hand the rest of it. I mean, the game was over in the first 12 minutes of the game.
To be clear, Duke played about as good as you can in the first 20 minutes of that basketball game. Offensively, defensively, all of their things, it's after dark. I mean, it was a fucking wet dream for 17 minutes, man.
Absolutely,
okay?
Man. Absolutely.
You can't do much more, all right?
No.
So let's, to be clear and fair on that, especially after the way they played against NC State, this is the exact response I or anyone else could have wanted to see from Duke. As I love to say, if you're about that life, be about that life.
Yes.
Duke was about that life tonight, okay? To be very, very clear. Now, North Carolina looked miserable in the first half. Whether it was energy, interest, motivation, execution, I don't know, team chemistry issues, all of those other things that Jay Williams had been talking about at the end of that pick loss. They looked miserable on that bench. They did not come into the building with any type of purpose, any type of chip on their shoulder, any type of I'll show you, which when you rewind and go back to Hubert's first season, that was an important part of winning that last game there. Yeah. Yes, you had all those Duke greats there lording over the Thunderdome. I mean, what a terrible fucking idea that was, by the way, in retrospect. But Carolina entered that game with, I'll show you. They have none of that. And this is the first time that I look at Carolina and I go, I don't think Hubert Davis has a way home. As Luke DeCock texted us, he hasn't seen a triangle team perform this poorly since Mark Godfrey was over at the Smith Center. Yeah. And it's true.
Yeah.
You cannot have these big fail moments in these games. Cannot. And I'm not talking about K losing at home in his last game by letting the game get away in the last, 3-4 minutes. I'm talking about not showing up. This was very reminiscent of Mac Brown's last football team to go over to Raleigh.
Yes.
And I was sitting here going, did they know that there's a game? Do they know? And spare me or hit your high notes right now. Capital R rivalry. Did they not know? So that's that's a coaching failure. What your team does and how much talent they have and all that other stuff and solving some of those, can't rebound, can't defend, this, that, the other. As a coach, it is your job to have your players ready to play a basketball game.
Yeah.
Hubert Davis did not have his players ready to play a basketball game tonight. And again, as someone who has consistently defended Hubert, when you have games like these and moments like these, you cannot get home from games like this.
No.
You cannot get home from moments like this because all of that other goodwill that you have, people look at. It's like the time Mark Godfrey called me. Well, you weren't very. I didn't feel like you were that nice to me. I didn't feel like you were really trying to help me. I said, Mark, I'm not the one who lost by 54 at the Smith Center.
Right.
This is not 54. The final score is extremely misleading at 87-70. Carolina scoring 45 points in the second half. Kind of sun running a little bit in the last 5 minutes, hitting some shots.
Well, real quick about that, right? We talked about and again, all credit goes to Duke, man, straight up. Like I said at the beginning of this, if you're just joining on YouTube right now, they understood the assignment. They put the hammer down. Cooper Flagg starts the game off on a poor note by missing free throws, his first trip to get some points in this game. And then from there, we were already on North Carolina body language watch in the first 5 minutes. As Mal Watch was keeping possessions going, Carolina tried to double Flagg early in that game. He gets it to Proctor, to your point. That's what you need in that situation. All right, that's not going to work because these other guys are going to hurt you. Well, what do? Straight up, Cooper Flagg's getting his couple of threes there early on. So basically, he was everything as advertised. At the 12-minute mark, Duke was shooting 69%. Now, that's a little bit of an aberration because Duke has not exactly been a monster in terms of offense, but they have been a monster in terms of defense. And that's where things continue to get out of hand for Carolina. After that 12-minute mark, Duke got a little bit sloppy. They had a couple out of bounds. I think there was one Cooper Flagg stepped out of bounds. Didn't cost him anything. I think at one point Isaiah Evans also had foot out of bounds as he was rebounding the ball. Carolina tries to inbound it. Duke gets the steal, right? I think at one point Con Knippel over on this end throws a pass to nobody. I think it sailed over Cooper Flagg. If I remember correctly, it either sailed over Cooper Flagg or just nobody was there. Did Carolina make him pay for that? No. And it's under 8 after a series of mistakes, right? Because it wasn't like Duke kept the hammer down the entire half. I mean, they opened up a little bit of a window, a little tiny crack, right? Under 8, it's 34-13. And that was after a series of Duke mistakes. But Duke's defense continues to put him in the game. And I know a lot of Duke fans have been in my mentions, at least, about Malik Brown's impact. I didn't necessarily see that big of an impact against State. They are what they are. But he obviously made an impact tonight in taking Carolina's best players out of the equation. Now, to the YouTube comments, man. We got Duke Gang. Gilio said, real monster beats down their true rival. Bing bong. There it is. Let's see.
Now, let's be clear here now.
Yes.
We're
going to the sports phone, too.
I'm going to go full Chuckamato on you. Ready?
You people.
You people now see the difference of what I'm talking about, right?
I think they do.
You get it now?
I think they do.
Do you see it now? Do you see me clearly? Thank you.
From James, UNC looked like the Charlotte Bobcats tonight. Man, that's harsh. All right, let's go to the sports phone.
919-444-2211. Call the OG Sports Phone and curse or don't.
The sports phone is brought to you by our friends at Nature's Relief, and Carolina fans will absolutely need some Nature's Relief to chill the hell out after tonight. This is 2 calls. Our guy G-Ville Tar Heel, who's very active on social media, very active on Twitter. I think he called 5 times. So I'm going to take you the first call to the call that actually made me laugh as I was starting to chop things up in the last 5 minutes here on Press Row. Here's the first call from G-Ville Tar Heel, which happened in the first half.
What's up, guys? G-Ville Tar Heel here. Long-time listener, first-time caller, long-time Twitterer. Tonight is the night. Carolina came in with no confidence. They came in with no offensive system. They came in with no defensive fucking anything. They didn't even care. I don't know what the fuck it was. They came in with I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, which is code for Hubert Davis fucking sucks as a coach. Which, as Carolina fans, we've known for 4 years, but he's been saved by certain players off the bench who come in and get hot, a.k.a. Brady Manick. And sometimes that's it. That's kind of it. Brady Manick's kind of the guy who saved his job.
So G-Ville gets interrupted there. He calls back later. I think he calls like a few more times. This one I appreciated. This call is art. Absolute art.
G-Ville Tar Heel here. This is me pretending to be Ovius, Giulio, and any dumb fuck college basketball expert they get on their fucking radio bullshit YouTube thing. Here it goes. Hey, what do you think about Hubert Davis? Do you think he'll get another year? This is me being a dumb fuck. Yeah, he'll get one more year. He has to. There's no way they get rid of him this year. They have to give him another year. Let him have a recruiting class in. Blah, 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 blah. Fucking bullshit. I don't know what I'm talking about. Man, sign me up. Put me on ESPN. The real Hubert Davis has to go. He fucking sucks. They didn't show up for a Duke game. You talk shit about Mac Brown not showing up for a state game. Hubert Davis coached a team that didn't show up for a fucking Duke game. And you want to tell me how he has one more year if they just shift around some assistant coaches? Fuck off. You don't get it. You're not a Carolina fan. You can act like you know what we think about. No. Fuck that. Fuck Hubert. He's out.
I thought you would appreciate the Mac Brown reference. You and Gville on the same page. That broke a man. Tonight broke a man. And I think that's what, to get back to what this is about, and there's more conversations to be had about Duke, obviously. I had some comments making the Gonzaga references, given that the ACC hasn't necessarily challenged Duke so far. But that's not what tonight was about. Tonight was about the next chapters in rivalries and that existential dread of what's been happening at UNC and with Hubert Davis and where this is all going. And like you said, Joe, and you're absolutely right, it's tough to come back with the fans when you have a performance like that. Straight up, you have a tough time. To the point where I had a national guy, I'm not going to say who was kind of on the same wavelength of, oh, come on, another year, give it time, Final Four. They were a number one seed last year. And they straight up said, yeah, after tonight, I might have to reassess how I view this. Now, I talked to another national guy who said, well, I mean, they got one more shot. They have this back in Chapel Hill, and we've seen stranger things. I mean, remember, back in 22, I'm just bringing this up for context, okay? You'll remember that in 22, Coach K's final year, Duke went to Chapel Hill and annihilated them. That game was over in the first 10 minutes, much like this game was over in the first 10 minutes, right? And then, of course, Carolina comes over here while they're in the middle of their run. But the issue is, and this is something that people will point out, and I completely agree, there's nothing a part of this group that would lead you to believe that something will kind of magically come together. So that's where we're at right now with the Tar Heels, Joe.
Yeah, this is a different level. And I brought up the Mark Godfrey game. I brought up the Mac Brown game. You just can't have these types of moments and think without a miracle sun run that there's a recovery. There is a way home.
Yeah.
Again, there is a financial to be consistent. When you have moments like this, these are difficult. It's difficult to erase with the fan base, for sure.
Yeah.
But there's still a different conversation that happens between athletic director, whoever he's answering to, and the coach. Those are more clear-minded, clear-headed. And there is a financial component to this. I said the same thing last year for NC State. For the sake of consistency, I will tell you, while no one needs to pass the hat for Carolina,
no,
the commitment they just made on the football side, I would say slightly hamstrings them when you also combine that with Hubert having the good things on his resume that he does. It doesn't, going back to Mark was a slam dunk. You lost by 54, then you get blown out by Wake, you have all those other things, right? Going back to Mac last year, 2 years ago, I would have fired Mac after that Carolina game.
Right.
But he had enough goodwill in his bank that they weren't going to fire him.
Well, here's the thing. Yeah, but here's the thing, though.
How much, the question becomes, how much goodwill does Hubert have in the bank?
Yeah.
And does that offset the financial strain that it would cause North Carolina to move on from him at the end of this year.
Okay.
The more you play like this, the easier that math gets and the easier you make it for the administration to make that decision. That's
Maybe
just a
it's-
reality.
Maybe it's because we were hanging out with Bomani Jones yesterday at the Rialto. And shout out to everybody who showed out yesterday. We had a great time at the Rialto. It was a lot of fun, and I believe the whole show is on the Varsity app from Learfield. So if you're a Carolina fan who just wants to relive some talking shit about
You
Duke,
should check that out.
you
Yes.
should just check that out because that will be good Tar Heel therapy for you. But Bomani likes to bring up the I forgot the AD, the Jeremy Foley, right? The Florida AD. Why put off? What was the line?
You can't put off what needs to be done. Can't put off what needs to be done tomorrow today.
That's the territory we've entered with Carolina and Hubert Davis. You said it with Mac Brown, and we might be into that territory with Hubert Davis. But like I said, basketball is a little bit different than football. You have more opportunities to try to make these things work out a little bit. And who knows? Maybe you do some soul searching after today. And who knows? Again, who knows? All right, let's go back to the sports phone.
Joe, NC State fan here. When is Carolina going to admit that NC State is a bigger rivalry than they let on? They're getting boat raced by Duke right now. And we gave both those teams a better game than they're giving them. I mean, listen. Sure, the rivalry, the history, whatever. We're here. We give them the games. We suck. We're still giving them the games. I don't know. Talk to you later.
I love NC State fans inserting themselves into the conversation. From the YouTube comments from Martin, the Gilio McRoberts Cooper Flagg agenda looking worse by the day.
It again, the numbers super similar. It's okay, Martin. Just say you don't watch the show, you don't pay attention, that you can't process how to make a comparison. Just say it. It's okay.
All right, back to the sports phone.
Gilio, Aiden Williams here. UNC, long life UNC fan, UNC student.
All right, I'm going to have to rework that one because, again, I'm just taking these straight off the Google voicemail. So that one's going to require a little Adobe Audition to clean up and boost. And we can do that for Monday's show. All right, here's another one.
Hello, OG. It's 8 o'clock. I think it's safe to say that Duke has put it in both ears on UNC. Unbelievable. No bigs for UNC. Amazing. Good night.
I thought you would appreciate that
See,
one.
now that's someone who listens to the show
They
and
listen
pays
to the show.
attention to the program. But the size, and this is where, if you're a Carolina fan, it's super hard to stomach that you're now this small team. Forever, you were the big team. Like seeing Tyler Hansborough last night, you just forget what a monster he was.
Right.
And you combine the size, the strength, the intensity that he played with. That's how you get the nickname Psycho T. They desperately need some of that in their life. And yeah, I get it, Gilio. You just said they should go back and get one of the greatest players in conference history. Great analysis. But
Right.
they
Just go
are
beat Clemson.
they're a small team, and Duke is a big team. And the way that Duke plays, as we've talked about consistently defensively,
Yes.
having Malwatch, and again, something I said in the preseason, allows Flagg to not have to defend the 5.
Yes.
Filipowski had to defend the 5. Even Banchero at times had to defend the 5.
Yeah.
It's been a big problem for Duke's one-and-done guys. Even Zion probably shouldn't have been defending the 5. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I think Malwatch is such a key piece of all of this that defensively,
Yeah,
he puts them in a different zone. Hubert going to a zone tonight, by the way. Hey, Empty the tricks. Empty the bag of tricks, man. Just empty it all out.
Didn't work for very long, but yes, at least they tried it. And yeah, like going back to how I started things, it's easy to talk about Flagg. It's easy to talk about Knipple. It's easy to talk about Tyrese Proctor. Again, I thought the way that Malwatch started this game was indicative of how things were going to go for Cooper Flagg and everybody else. And now, to be clear, this is a matchup advantage. Okay, there's an X and O's element to this, and there's a Jimmy's and Joe's element to this, and this is a bad matchup for Carolina. And you got to still go out there and execute, right? You still got to go out there and do it, but that's exactly what they did. Let's see. Speaking of the hot takes, this came to us from Blue Sky from Dave. Hot take, Joe. Jay Bill is calling Cooper Flagg the most complete freshman to ever play at Duke, and I wonder how he forgot Grant Hill so quickly. The story hasn't been written. It's not complete yet for Cooper Flagg. Let's see how the rest of the season goes for him. He could easily become that guy depending on how the whole entire season goes. Let's see what happens in March, right? But I do think that we're a little bit caught up in SEO brain, and we spent a lot of time online, and this guy's built different, and this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. There's recency bias and all that kind of stuff. Again, this is not to diminish from what Cooper Flagg is doing, but at the same time, let's just chill here for a little bit and see how the rest of the season goes. Let's see. Back to the OG Sports phone.
Hey guys, this is Ernie. You know, I named my daughters Paige and May after my two favorite Heels players. And Hubert has pissed me off to the point where I'm embarrassed to tell people that that's who they're named after, Carolina basketball players. I mean, I'm glad we got Bill, but now it's time to clean house. Hubert, you're done, buddy. You're done. I mean, maybe Bart Stevens, maybe. Let me know, boys. Bye.
Mark Stevens. Who's Mark Stevens? Brad Stevens? Okay, I can hear that one. Text message from a 910. I held out as long as I could, but I'm done. Luckily, had a Canes game and didn't watch that shit show. Hubert doesn't get next year. It's now first game I have not watched since 1980. We're doing this live. What is the Canes score right now anyway? Losing to the Kings 4-2 right now with 7:30 to go. Yikes, Canes. Although apparently like everybody's got norovirus in that locker room. Did you see the clip? Did you see the clip from Rod saying like everybody's questionable tonight?
Yeah.
Woof.
Yeah.
All right. From a 919, hold me now. I'm 6 feet from the edge, and I'm thinking maybe 6 feet ain't so far down. Every UNC fan watching this game, brutal. UNC has looked lost for most of the game. Props to Van Allen, Lubin, and Jalen for some fight in the second half. Another text message from a 336. Hi, Bobby from Winston-Salem, two-time UNC grad. Sleeping baby is limiting my ability to call this in, but it must be said, while this game always delivers, this game isn't delivering. It's fucking depressing. The state of this team had me flipping over to the Canes game instead of the first half. That's a bad sign for Hubert. See, I look at this the other way, Joe. I look at this the other way. I think this is a credit to the Carolina Hurricanes. That the Carolina Hurricanes are such a good product, and the trade for Mikko Rantanen has people going, you know what? Let me see what the Canes are doing. It's not an insult. It's actually a credit to the Carolina Hurricanes and how things have been going. Let's see. I got one more text message from a 919. How has UNC basketball not gone and found an O lineman to come and just have any kind of presence in the paint? Bill's delivering. Bill Belichick is delivering pizza to the frats. Can he not deliver an O lineman or like a lacrosse player that might have some ups? Does he have that in him?
They signed another lacrosse player.
Oh, geez. That's awesome. Bill, hey, college football playoff, baby, with lacrosse players. All right, back to the sports phone.
Evening, boys. This is Curtis. I have followed you guys forever. Joe, great guy. I know that I messed with Giglio about his hair. His hair is crazy. And Ovius, my favorite moment ever is you getting left out of Old Tuffy. This game was an absolute masterclass by Duke. They played defense, and their defense was outstanding and took them out of the game. And I do believe that Carolina finally aged out. They had Captain Caveman, Brady Manick, gone. Armando Baycott, gone. R.J. Davis is the last one holding the flag. And they've got Elliot Cadeau, who is not a good point guard. But I just want to say that, yeah, the defense for Duke is what took them out of the game. They absolutely swarmed them. They had no answer for it. They were passing the ball. They were putting up shots. And then they got nothing. And oh, by the way, there's been so much hype around Cooper Flagg, but they had no plan for Con Knipple. And we had a Tyrese Proctor sighting tonight. So, my God, if these guys can start to continue to play the offense that they need to play through their defense, it's going to be an absolutely dominant season. And everybody's talking about Auburn. People are not talking about the fact that Duke beat Auburn. And, by the way, the other thing was Carolina fans are down bad right now, boys. I feel bad. I've got multiple friends telling me if I say anything tonight that I'm going to get blocked. I'm going to get blocked on social media. I'm going to get blocked on text. It's a bad night. The boys are down bad. But it was an outstanding win for Duke. I thought that they jumped after them right out the gate. I mean, it was a 7-6 game, and then all of a sudden, boom, they forced Carolina into taking one shot, and Carolina couldn't hit the shots, and Duke was just scoring offense off defense. So it's a scary thing if these guys can play this type of defense and win on offense. But as always, you guys are the best. I did my best to not curse, as I'm sure that others will. But, again, big fan. Love you guys. Love the show. Keep doing what you're doing and look forward to seeing more analysis going forward.
Well done. Well done. Let's see what else we got here. From Slick Pack, Proctor was a third piece for Duke. Giglio's plan for Duke's success. Yes. From Quentin, Malik Brown didn't play. I know that, Quentin. I mentioned that. Like, I get that Malik Brown wasn't in that game. I was just saying that they didn't need him in that game. That wasn't the key piece to why State was lighting it up on Duke. Sorry. In a game like this and going forward, yes, I understand his importance along with Malwatch and his development. All right, let's go back to the sports phone.
Hey, this is Bowie's Creek Billy. You need to talk about the Campbell. I don't give a piss about nothing but the humps, baby.
Campbell win tonight? I don't have that on my Apple sheet.
All right, so
Roll humps.
I'm thinking about when does this really ever happen to Carolina? When do games like this ever really happen? And I'm thinking of one, and it's the reason people to this day don't like Jason Capel. The Maryland game up there. Maryland had a fucking warhorse, okay?
Right.
And they beat them by 50. I mean, they just plastered them.
Right.
And Capel hits a three down like 48 and is throwing up the threes. And it was 23 years ago. And I'm telling you, people have never forgotten it, right? The coach that year was Matt Doherty. And you know, we can you're right. We can analyze all of this stuff. We can go over the whole thing. We can talk about Malik Brown. We can talk about Carolina's, lack of size. We can talk about Duke's defense. Talk about Cameron, the officials, the Heat. Nobody threw up. We could talk about 9 million things.
The World War II Heat was not on today.
I had it. Maybe it's still here. No, it was on my notes yesterday.
Okay.
You had Dean Smith for 36 years. You had Roy Williams for 18. You had a unbelievable run over a long, long, long time. We had Bubba Cunningham on our radio program after he had hired Hubert Davis, and we both asked a similar question that was essentially, how much time will Hubert Davis get to follow this legend?
Not much time.
Because He said no.
Yeah.
We expect him to come in right away
Yeah.
and retain our standard, meet our standard. And I thought to myself then, I'm not sure they get it. A lot of people tell me, oh, you don't get it. Well, I'm trying to tell you, Carolina, you had two of the all-time greatest. You didn't have games like this when those guys were the coach. You didn't have moments like this when those guys were the coach. All-timers. When you don't have one of them, Matt Doherty, now Hubert Davis, more of these moments come up and come up. I'm not saying it's okay to be Indiana. And I know that's a new thing because Ross Martin had talked about it. But the truth of the matter is Indiana had one. Okay?
Yeah.
They had one.
Yeah, Carolina's had
You've had two.
Yeah.
And for a long fucking time. And yes, that is the State fan in me saying to you, a long time.
Yeah.
Okay. Where Duke has gotten this thing right. Okay. Because I do think John is a good coach. But where they've gotten this thing right is the investment.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I thought last year's roster was flawed. Said it at the time. Last year's roster was flawed. They did not go into the portal. They did not. I'm still trying to figure out what last year's recruiting class was supposed to be.
Oh, what, Duke?
Yeah.
Well,
it was a top 10 class or a top 5 class. It had no shooters, no ball handlers, no size.
Much like the draft, every draft is different. Every class is different. 5 stars are not all created every year the same, right? I think we all understand that. And then if you believe the Duke splain, because you know how I feel about this sort of stuff, sometimes Duke fan enters into European soccer fan where we just don't understand ball. It wasn't that they couldn't get a big man. There was one that, I guess I forgot who it was off the top of my head. I'm sure somebody in the chat will tell me. It's academically it didn't work. And I'm like,
He went to Kansas State. Sure. Yes, sure. McCain was, out of the 5 players you signed, you had one good player.
Yeah, McCain was
that guy. This is my point.
Yeah, that was the point.
The roster construction last year was bad. This year's
team. And they still got to the Elite 8, Joe.
And that was their, right? That's pretty impressive.
Come on now.
They were by their standard, they were a bad team and they made the Elite 8. But okay. They're a lot of the same things you could say about this Carolina team you could have said about that team last year. In the sense that, well, whose fault is it that you don't have X, Y, and Z on the roster? It's their fault. Well, what they did this offseason, it's not just Flagg and Knipple. It's Gillis. It's Brown. It's, adding some veteran pieces, adding some other parts. Malwatch, again, I'll go back to how important that he is. So you got distinct pieces. What does Carolina have? I mean, they have 2 Munchkin guards who can't guard anyone. One can't score. And then they have 2 good wings who are young. And again, that should get us back to Cooper Flagg in his consistency of his production. That is his true strength. But I'm giving Duke credit for the understanding the faults of their roster construction last year and really hitting all of the spots. And every T was crossed. Every I was dotted, whether they win the national championship or not.
I think we're also
their roster construction and their financial commitment. And I know there's a State fan screaming at me saying, I could spend $10 million too and come up with the number 1 team in the country. You could, but money doesn't always buy you what you want. Okay.
Yeah. But here's the thing, though. We talk about roster construction too. The other thing that Duke had going in its favor is that they had a generational talent coming in as a freshman and understanding the assignment. Later, Andy. So that's the other thing going forward with recruiting and everything else. Where it is going for Carolina, obviously where it's going from Duke. Let's see. I think we got time for one more sports phone call. So let's do that.
Mikey in DFW just got done watching the game, and it's one thing. It's great that Carolina can get dog walked by its biggest rival in the biggest game of the season. But hey, at least we got those the sleeveless hoodies that we can sell for a football team that's going to go 8-4 again and lose to State. What the hell are we doing? Come on.
Yes. Let's see. To Blue Sky, because I had said something about the Hubert Davis folded arms. Let's just go ahead and you put yourself in this shit. You can get yourself out of it. From Bebelieb on Blue Sky, would be the least deserved y'all, considering the mistakes made tonight are the same ones this team has made all year. Roy's team's made progress as the year went along. Hubert's, when does something become a trend? Yeah, that's pretty much where we're at. Let's see. From T. Hey, Joe, if you're going to be in the stadium, embrace the stadium. I don't know what that means. Embrace the stadium. I don't know. Explain that one, T. Let's see. Gville Tar Heel. Matthew. I think this is probably the best way to close out. He's God is real for UNC fans because Royal Rumble is tonight, and this is the only thing keeping me going with our girl, Rhea Ripley.
Mommy always comes out on top.
I'll have to watch the highlights. That's the true After Dark for me, watching the Royal Rumble highlights.
That's on your time.
Hey, Joe, there's something on the internet for everybody, man.
Mm-hmm.
Something on the internet for everybody. All right, and one more from Bart. Honestly, as objective as you guys can be, do you think UNC fans have cause for concern with HT? Yes, of course they do. Of course they do. We'll wrap on this.
You can't have nights like this. You can't have the season like 23. That wasn't good.
No. So this is what I will say, and it's actually piggybacking off of something that Scott Van Pelt said on Field of 68 that went viral this week, where he said, why is everybody okay? I'm paraphrasing, but it was essentially, why is everybody okay with UNC being okay? I want to be crystal clear on this, and I'm sure we'll spend a good chunk of time talking about it this week on the normal pod. Nobody is saying that it is okay. At least I'll speak for me. I am not saying it is okay for UNC to be okay. I understand why people feel the way that they feel about the university and the standard and who you are and what your identity is, and you don't want to repeat the mistakes at Carolina that you have seen at other blue blood programs that have gone through the wilderness and never come back, or have had their bumps and then have come back. They don't want to go through long bumps in the road, right? So I completely understand where they're coming from. I think, and again, I'll speak for me, much like last year where we spent all season talking about the context around Kevin Keats at NC State, I feel that there's an obligation to talk about the context around Hubert Davis and North Carolina, the financial considerations, and, this year-to-year prospect of college basketball, as you like to point out, Joe. And for what I keep pointing out, I don't know, it won't, in my opinion, it will not matter who the head coach at North Carolina is unless they understand where we are in the modernization of basketball and what it takes to play at that level. I have not questioned that. And when I say play at that level, I'm talking about in terms of roster construction, getting recruits, and everything else that goes along with it. I have not questioned that since John Shire has taken over at Duke. I have not questioned that. I have questioned that with North Carolina. And I got to imagine that behind the scenes, those same questions are having. And I'll go back to the messenger and the message. Well, you and I have been having this conversation for the better part of 2 years. It took Theo Pinson on his podcast and that clip going viral where he said, hey, man, this shit don't play anymore. Players want the bread. I highly recommend you go listen to the Varsity app from Learfield of our conversation with Lavelle Moten yesterday from NC Central and what it's like at every level for college basketball and what it takes to get a recruit. So Carolina has, I think the light bulb has gone on. And I think the light bulb has gone on. And if Hubert Davis doesn't want to play that game, I'm sure there will be a conversation with Bubba Cunningham at the end of the year, just like there is every year. And it's about modernizing. And if Hubert doesn't want to play that game, if he wants to be stubborn, if he says we don't want to be transactional, if we like whatever, well, then Bubba's going to have to make a decision at that point. Because it has the potential to get ugly. But that's what a loss like this does, man. That's what you talk about it delivering, and people can say it sarcastically. Not delivered. It delivered storylines. It delivered storylines for Duke, kind of setting the table for the rest of the way, because we understand this game is the unofficial start to the college basketball season. Save me this shit with John Calipari going back to Kentucky and all that stuff. Like, I don't know. I don't view that as the top story of the day. This is what sets the tone the rest of the way, and the tone's been set the rest of the way. Duke and just how far they can go with this class with Cooper Flagg, and where the hell Carolina goes after this. There's your storylines. It delivered. You can't ask for much more than that. Anyway, any final thoughts, Joe, before we say goodbye?
Well said.
There we go. How you feeling, by the way?
Look at your mic and your headphones. You're so predictable after you were there on Monday with your what are they called? Your
that was old corded
iPhone
earpods. That was iPhone. Yeah, and that was with the actual stereo jack.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you sounded. It sounded like amateur hour, which is fine. Like,
no,
you're in the building, but
not.
You're so predictable. You show up, I see the mic and the headphones, and I'm like, oh boy, Joe. See, I tell you, I go back and listen, and you're like, no, I never do. You did, because you heard it, and now you're like, God.
Well, I had to edit the YouTube. That's why I heard it, and I was like, God, that sounds like shit. So no, we're not going to do this. Just like, hey, Joe, if Carolina has a standard, you know what? I also have. I have a standard. And what did you say years ago? You called it like a polish, a little polish. Is that what we needed, right? It's like there's nothing wrong with being a little ramshackle. Like, people understand this is very DIY. It's just two dudes on a YouTube stream, right? But you gotta have a little polish sometimes, Joe. A little polish.
Sometimes you gotta have a little polish.
Anyway, that's gonna wrap it up. We will. I'm gonna put this on OG Triangle Media. I'll put the podcast version on for OG fans, because I'm not gonna have time for a panic room. But you guys can enjoy that, and then we will see you Monday